The search has been going on now for about 4 decades, but now an exploration group is saying that it has finally found Lake Michigan's oldest known shipwreck.
For over 300 years, the Great Lakes have hidden a massive secret. In 1679, the Griffon, a floating fortress meant to conquer a continent, sailed into a storm and simply vanished. No SOS, no witnesses, just gone. For centuries, hunters have called this the Holy Grail of shipwrecks, claiming it's filled with a fortune in furs and gold. But here's the catch. Recent divers claim they finally found the hull, but what they discovered inside doesn't match the history books. Is this the end of the mystery, or proof of a 350-year-old cover-up? The million-dollar wooden gamble. Basically, to understand why this shipwreck matters so much, you have to understand the guy who built it. His name was René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de la Salle, and he wasn't just an explorer, he was a gambler. In 1679, North America was a wild, untamed place. The French wanted to control the fur trade, which back then was like controlling the oil industry today. It was all about money. But there was a huge problem. To get furs from the west back to the east, you had to use canoes. Canoes are slow, small, and easy to flip over. La Salle had a crazy idea. He wanted to build a massive European-style ship right in the middle of the wilderness. But here's the catch. He had to build it above Niagara Falls.
Yeah, coming up against this would be pretty imposing.
Yes, he needed a great ship, and he knew he was going to have to build it above the falls.
Imagine trying to build a spaceship on a desert island with no tools. That is basically what La Salle was doing. He had to haul giant iron anchors, cannons, and rigging all the way from the ocean, drag them up the cliffs around the massive waterfalls, and then build the ship in a forest. It was a logistical nightmare. His team wasn't happy about it either. They were freezing, tired, and surrounded by local Iroquois tribes who weren't exactly thrilled about a giant warship being built in their backyard. There were rumors that people were trying to burn the ship before it even touched the water. But La Salle was stubborn. He pushed his men to the breaking point. They cut down white oak trees from the forest to make the hull. They used greased logs to roll the massive pieces of wood into place. It was brutal work. But when they were done, they had created a monster. They named it Le Griffon. This thing was a beast. It was about 45 feet long and 10 to 15 feet wide. That might sound small today, but back then, on a lake where everyone else was paddling bark canoes, this was like seeing an alien spacecraft. It had huge white sails and, get this, it was armed with 7 iron cannons. When they launched it, they fired a cannon shot that echoed across the water, announcing to everyone, the British, the Dutch, and the indigenous nations, that France was here to take over.
It is a 45-ton, 7-cannon Brock.
It's loaded with fur, and he and the crew really think they're about to make bank.
The plan was simple on paper, but dangerous in reality. The ship would sail west, load up with tons of valuable furs, and bring them back. One trip with Le Griffon could carry more cargo than hundreds of canoes. If it worked, La Salle would be rich, and France would rule the trade routes. If it failed, total ruin. The pressure was insane. La Salle had borrowed a ton of money to make this happen. He was deep in debt. He needed this ship to succeed, or he was finished. So, in August 1679, Le Griffon set sail. It was the first time a ship of that size had ever tested the waters of Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Lake Michigan. It must have been a terrifying ride. The Great Lakes aren't like the ocean. The waves are steep, the storms come out of nowhere, and the water is fresh, which makes buoyancy different. They made it to Green Bay, Wisconsin. This was the moment of truth. La Salle's men loaded the ship with 12,000 pounds of beaver pelts. Let's put that in perspective. In today's money, that cargo was worth hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars. It was a floating bank vault. La Salle decided not to sail back with the ship. He had more exploring to do. He handed the keys, or rather the wheel, to a pilot named Luke. And this is where things get sketchy. La Salle stayed behind, watching his fortune sail away toward the horizon. He assumed the ship would drop off the furs and come right back with supplies. He stood on the shore, watching the white sails fade into the distance. He never saw the ship again. The ship was gone, but the mystery of the pilot's dark past was just beginning to surface. Traitors in the crew. So, here's the deal with the pilot. His name was Luke, or Luke, and he is one of the biggest question marks in this whole story. You'd think the guy entrusted with the most expensive ship in North America would be famous, right? Wrong. He is a total ghost. Historians have looked everywhere. There are no birth records for him, no marriage certificates, no records of him in the French Navy. It's like he didn't exist until he stepped onto Le Griffon. This lack of information drives experts crazy. Some people think Luke was an alias. Why would a skilled pilot hide his identity? LaSalle later wrote letters that hinted he didn't trust the guy. He used words like suspicion and doubt. Here is the theory that keeps coming up. What if Luke wasn't loyal to LaSalle at all? The fur trade was a dirty business. LaSalle had enemies everywhere. The merchants in Montreal hated him because he had a monopoly. They wanted him to fail so they could take over the business. And get this, there were rumors that these rivals had paid off members of LaSalle's crew. When Le Griffon left Green Bay on September 18, 1679, there were only 6 crew members on board, plus the pilot. That is a tiny crew for a ship that size, especially in bad weather. And the weather was bad. The local Potawatomi tribe warned them. They told the crew, "Don't go out there, a storm is coming." They knew the lakes, but Luke ignored them. Was it arrogance? Or was he in a rush to get away? The ship sailed out of the harbor and into the gray mist. The locals watched it go, and that is the last confirmed sighting of Le Griffon. Now, let's talk about the cargo again. 12,000 pounds of furs. If the ship sank, that money is at the bottom of the lake. But there's another possibility that is way more scandalous. What if the ship didn't sink?
There's no wreckage, there are no survivors, it's gone.
Is there any evidence of this incredibly expensive load of furs anywhere? No. Their disappearance is a total mystery.
LaSalle himself started to believe that his crew had mutinied. Think about it. You are out in the middle of nowhere with a fortune in furs. Your boss is miles away. You have a ship that can take you anywhere. The theory goes like this. Luke and the crew sailed the ship to a hidden spot on the shore. They unloaded the furs to sell them on the black market. Then, to hide the evidence, they burned Le Griffon and sank it on purpose. It sounds like a movie plot, but back then it was totally possible. People disappeared in the frontier all the time. If they pulled this off, they would be set for life. LaSalle spent months waiting for his ship. When it didn't show up, he didn't just assume it was the weather. He wrote letters accusing his enemies of sabotage. He believed the pilot had been bribed. He even heard rumors later on about a group of Frenchmen who looked suspiciously like his crew, trading furs in the Mississippi Valley. But without the ship, he couldn't prove anything. This is why finding the wreck is so important. If divers find the ship and the cargo hold is empty, it proves the mutiny theory. It proves that the tragedy was actually a heist. But if they find the furs still inside, then it was just the storm. For over 300 years, nobody could answer that question. The lake kept its secrets. But recently, technology has started to peel back the layers of water and mud. And what searchers are finding is confusing everyone. The storm swallowed the ship, but a darker storm was brewing in the courtroom centuries later. Nature's violent trap. Let's look at the science for a second. Because even if there was no mutiny, the Great Lakes are terrifying. Modern scientists have done some detective work using tree rings. It's called dendrochronology. By looking at old trees from the 1600s, they can tell what the weather was like. And the data shows that the autumn of 1679 was brutal. We are talking about a year with extreme weather patterns. When that storm hit Lake Michigan, it wouldn't have been like a storm on the ocean. Ocean waves are long and rolling. You can ride them. Great Lakes waves are short, steep, and violent. They smash into a ship like a hammer. The distance between the waves is so short that a ship like Le Griffon could get caught with its bow on one wave and its stern on another, leaving the middle hanging in the air. Then, crack. The ship snaps in half. Also, fresh water is less dense than salt water. That means ships sit lower in the water. They are heavier. When a 20-foot wave crashes over the deck, the water doesn't clear as fast. If Luke the pilot sailed into that, he was in big trouble. The Potawatomi said the storm lasted for days. They said the wind was howling so loud it shook the trees. Imagine being on a wooden boat, pitching in pitch-black darkness, hearing the timbers groan and crack. The cannons would have been straining against their ropes. If one of those heavy iron cannons broke loose, it would roll across the deck like a wrecking ball, smashing through the hull from the inside. So, the natural disaster theory is strong. The ship leaves, the storm hits, the ship goes down. Simple. But here is where it gets complicated. If the ship broke apart in a storm, there should be wreckage. Wood floats, barrels float. In 1679, after the ship vanished, There were rumors of debris washing up on the shores of Lake Huron, miles away from where it started. Some people reported seeing a hatch cover or pieces of a cabin, but no bodies were ever found. Not one. Usually when a ship goes down, something washes up. The fact that Le Griffon disappeared so completely is what fuels the conspiracy theories. It's almost too clean. And then there is the curse. Over the years, the legend grew. People started saying Le Griffon was a ghost ship. Sailors in the 1800s claimed they saw a burning ship in the fog. They said if you saw Le Griffon, you were doomed. It became the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes. This mix of science and superstition makes the search incredibly hard. The lake floor is massive. We are talking about thousands of square miles of bottom. And it's not just sand down there, it's rocks, silt, and deep crevices. And recently, a new enemy has appeared that makes finding the ship almost impossible: zebra mussels. These are invasive little clams that have taken over the Great Lakes. They cover everything. If there is a wooden ship down there, it is likely covered in a thick crust of mussels. You could swim right past Le Griffon and think it was just a rock formation. Despite this, salvage divers haven't stopped looking. And a few years ago, a team claimed they finally cracked the code. They found a massive timber sticking out of the mud. It looked ancient. It looked French. And the location matched the old maps perfectly. The media went wild. Headlines screamed, "Le Griffon found." But it's not that simple though. They popped the champagne, but the scientists were about to ruin the entire party. Science versus the treasure hunters. Enter the modern treasure hunters. The most famous search was led by a guy named Steve Libbert. He has been obsessed with finding Le Griffon for decades. He is convinced he knows where it is. In the early 2000s, his team was scanning the bottom of Lake Michigan near the Poverty Island Passage. Their sonar picked up something. They went down to check it out. What they saw made their hearts stop. A massive wooden beam sticking out of the lake bed at an angle. To them, it looked exactly like the bowsprit of an old ship, the pole that sticks out the front. They did more scans. They claimed they saw a hole buried in the mud. They were 99% sure this was it.
What is the probability? Like from 0 to 100 in your mind, what is the probability?
99.99.
No!
They even went to court to get the rights to the shipwreck. The state of Michigan and the country of France got involved. This was a diplomatic incident. If this was Le Griffon, it belonged to France because it was a king's ship. But it was in Michigan waters. The legal battle cost a fortune and dragged on for years. Finally, they got permission to excavate the timber. They brought in the experts. They dredged up the mud. They carefully analyzed the wood. And that's when the dream collapsed. The scientists looked at the wood samples. They looked at the carbon dating. The timber wasn't from 1679. It was from a completely different era. It wasn't a bowsprit. It was likely an old stake used for fishing nets in the 1800s. Talk about a letdown. But wait, there's more. In 2014, and again in more recent years, other divers claimed to find the wreck. One group found a piece of wood with Roman numerals carved into it. They said it was a construction marking from LaSalle's shipwrights. Again, the experts swooped in. They analyzed the fasteners, the bolts holding the wood together. So, what do you think really happened? Did the pilot steal the cargo and burn the ship? Or did the Great Lakes just swallow them whole? It's a 300-year-old riddle. Let me know your theory in the comments below. And if you want more unsolved history mysteries, smash that like button and subscribe.